Hi, welcome. This is Aysebo Umutlu from EDNews-TV. We are having today honorable guest who won World Food Prize just yesterday. While she was visiting Azerbaijan, so it's very special for us, and we are very happy that you got this honorable guest in Azerbaijan, dear Heidi Kuhn, who is a CEO of Roots of Peace. I would like to ask a few questions to you, but firstly, Heidi Kuhn, were you expecting this World Food Prize award?
Oh, it was just a great honor and a great surprise, and certainly to have received it here in Azerbaijan, where I was so passionate when I first saw Karabakh a year ago for International Women's Day. You know, I had just planned with the founder, Umud, to come out here for a celebration of Mother's Day, because I feel very strongly about the fact that mothers, you know, who give birth to beautiful children, whole beautiful children with legs and arms and eyes, cradling them in their arms, and to know that today we live in a world with an estimated 60 million landmines silently poised in 60 countries. So Karabakh was just, to me, a symbol of really this beautiful land that was just devastated. And Roots of Peace carries no flag. We are not a political organization. This is a humanitarian issue. This is an area once known as the Black Garden. We're known for the beautiful purple grapes, much like the area where I come from, which is Napa Valley. And the vision of turning mines to vines, I think, potentially in terms of the vision that is needed to heal the wounds of war in that very wounded land, can be embodied there. That peace can be planted, I think, for the world to see, because the coincidence factor that here I am in Azerbaijan, having walked a minefield earlier this week, and with Anama detonating 6 anti-tank mines. What a bittersweet moment that was for me, because I was so delighted to get one out. And then the sense of sadness that so many millions remain. And it's a daunting task, but to see the people, the villagers of that area establishing a Karabakh international airport, you know, as I'm driving through war-devastated lands, homes broken, no grocery stores, no malls, you know, just devastation, but in the middle of no man's land, quite frankly, is Karabakh International Airport. And I think it just shows the resilience of the people and human beings. Again, we carry no flag, and we only serve the farmer, but I hope to help restore that farming community. And on behalf of the mothers that I stood shoulder to shoulder with in Fuzuli, you know, I'm just very dedicated to making that a garden for their children.
We'll come back to that conversation, but I would like to talk a little bit about your organization, Roots of Peace. How this idea came to you, and why you wanted to create this organization. Just tell us about that.
Well, Roots of Peace was really born in my heart, and looking back 25 years, it really was a vision of turning mines to vines, replacing the scourge of landmines with bountiful vineyards and orchards worldwide. I think it really was a tapestry of my life, being born and raised 5th generation in a beautiful place called Marin County, California. It's the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And, you know, I have 4 beautiful children, and they were just small then. I had a 2-year-old, a 10, 12, and 14-year-old. And when I saw Princess Diana walking through those minefields twice in the same year in which she tragically passed, in January in Angola, and then once again in August in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I think really her footsteps for peace didn't really represent a princess, but I saw her as a mother, because my boys, Brooks and Tucker, were the same age as William and Harry. And I took them to soccer practice, and when I heard that children couldn't kick a soccer ball out of bounds somewhere in the world and lose a limb or leg to a landmine, I just as a mother on behalf of the children of the world, I set out on a quest and fueled from my heart. And to be here today in Azerbaijan and the incredible miracle of being the recipient of the World Food Prize.
I know that you were fighting against cancer and you won cancer.
Yes.
I would like you to tell us how it happened, what you promised to God.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley, majoring in political economics during the 1970s. And that was a time in my generation of the Vietnam War. And it defined our generation, a generation of peace and love, and we felt strongly about that war. And during those years in the 70s, I met my dear husband-to-be when we were 19 years old, and we studied together at school. And, you know, never dreaming today we would take those economics of peace and put them to practice in the real world. We were married on Valentine's Day and had 3 beautiful children, age 1, 3, and 5. And he was moved to Juneau, Alaska. He was with IBM, which people know means I've been moved, because they used to move people around before we had were able to work at home via the internet. But I moved to Juneau in January, and it was just, as a mother, you know, home with 3 little children, it's 23 hours of darkness there. It's the land of the midnight sun. So I had a career at that point in banking. I had worked for American Express and Barclay Visa, and I thought, well, my goodness, what am I going to do up here in Alaska? Well, it was a convergence much like it is here this week in Azerbaijan. Dear friends of mine told me that I should get experience as a reporter in a remote market. So when my husband went out of town to Poughkeepsie, New York, I thought I'd have a little fun with that. And I went down to the local TV station, KJUD, and I applied. And they brought me in to meet the general manager and said, "You're hired. You're the weather anchor tomorrow night on the 6 o'clock news." Now, that was quite remarkable because when my husband came home from New York to Alaska, I had a little magic trick, because with those 3 little children, I got a babysitter during the day, just from 4 to 6, just 3 hours, and I would drive to the TV station. I would do my weather report, and the children thought at my magic act that I could shrink inside of a television, and Mommy got small and did the weather, because they, you know, little children seeing their mother shrink. It was quite amusing. So with that experience, all the big experience as a weather anchor, another tragedy happened, unexpected, in Alaska, and that was the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and 11 million gallons of oil poured into the pristine waters of the Prince William Sound. And I decided I was going to start my own news company at that time, and I was going to name it the Alaska Newslink. Now, again, my dear supportive husband came home from a business trip in the lower 48, those are the lower 48 states, and said, "What did you do, honey?" "Well, now with my experience of weather, I've started a TV company." And he said, "What are you going to report on?" "Cold weather and bears." And then the Exxon Valdez hit. So I went to the governor, and his name was Governor Steve Cooper, and I said, you know, we have reporters coming in from all over the world. At that point, remember, we didn't have cell phones, so I asked if he could take that transponder that was taking the news up from the lower 48 and projecting it to Homer and Barrow, and turn it and be able to tell the news from Alaska about the worst oil spill disaster in U.S. history, and we were able to satellite it, and you know, it aired around the world. So another very important thing was happening in Alaska at that time that wasn't happening in New York or Washington, D.C. That was the melting of the ice curtain between U.S.-Soviet relations. And because Alaska was once part of the Soviet Union, Alaska was it was sold. It was called Seward's Folly, and it was sold in part of the United States. So what had happened at the Bering Sea between Big Diomede and Little Diomede, the border between the United States and then the USSR, were that because of the 70 years of communism, families and friends were separated. And what was happening in Alaska was not happening anywhere else in the world, and that is because of those neighbors having been family. There was what I dubbed the melting of the ice curtain between U.S.-Soviet relations. So I decided at that point I wanted to go to the Soviet Union and cover that story. And it took 6 months to get the visa. It was through the Foundation for Social Innovation, led by Henry Dakin of Dakin Toy Company. And the hour that I was about to go up to fly to Moscow, I got into Moscow, and they canceled all foreign interviews, and I had the exclusive interview with Gennady Gerasimov that Andrei Sakharov, who was a peacemaker, had just died. And that just set off a cascade of a business career. When I came back, I had a neck ache. I went to the doctor, and he did a physical, and I was diagnosed with malignant cancer. And I had a 1-, 3-, and 5-year-old, and I was told to go to the hospital, and they didn't have an operation room there, and I had to fly with 3 children. And I learned at a very early age, at 30, what an oncologist was. And I had surgery, and it was malignant cervical cancer. And, you know, years later, I went back to the same OB with a terrible stomach ache, and he said, "You have a miracle. You're pregnant." And so I have 3 children and 1 named Christian. And as I was nursing this child, you know, anyone who goes under the knife and goes through surgery as a young mother, my particular prayer was, "Dear God, grant me the gift of life, and I will do something special with it." So I stopped my journalism, I hung up my cleats. I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mommy with 4 kids and just, you know, with having survived cancer, just be content with being at home. But that promise came to fruition when I saw Princess Diana walking the minefields. And it hit me that cancer is a landmine. None of us know when we're going to get it. And landmines are a cancer to the world. And it was very clear to me that removal was the solution. So I set out, because of my international background, I was actually asked by the Commonwealth of San Francisco to host an event at my home. And the people who had just come from Princess Diana's funeral were in the living room of my home. And it was September 21st, 1997, and with these 100 dignitaries in our room, of our living room, Ambassador Hans Ulla Erstad from Norway, the Consul General of Germany, and dear friends, and I lifted my glass from my heart and said, "May the world go from mines to vines."
To vines. Dear Heidi.
And so the quest began.
So that's how your great work started, about making peace, right? For me, one more question about, I know you have been working in different countries like Cambodia or Vietnam and Afghanistan, and there is another country like mine, Azerbaijan, is added to your list. How your relations with Azerbaijan has started, and take us through that journey, please.
Well, the journey, quickly following up there, is, you know, I began our work in Croatia shortly after the Balkan War. There were 1.2 million landmines, and with the Napa Valley Vintners, especially Mienko Mike Gergic, who was born there, he flew with me in January 2000, and we set out on a quest to turn mines to vines. And I can say in my lifetime I have seen a war-torn country transform into one of the top tourist destinations in the world. Now, where I went from there, after the 9/11 attacks on the United States, we learned of Afghanistan, but I dug deeper and learned that it is a country 80% dependent upon agriculture for jobs, and conversely, the most heavily mined country in the world. Now I thought, how can farmers possibly farm their land with millions of landmines in the ground? So with funding from Diane Disney Miller, daughter of Walt Disney, I immediately went up to the Shumali Plains, and it was my husband, it was our whole family. I really want to emphasize, because very unusual for a Marin County mother to be walking through the minefields of the world. I live in one of the most beautiful counties in the United States, and you don't have to leave your backyard. But when I saw firsthand the suffering of these children, the suffering of these mothers in Croatia, what was a flicker in my heart, a flame, became a bonfire. You know, the little match was lit, and it was a deep commitment. In Afghanistan, I can say proudly today as CEO, I manage $85 million under contract, $30 million with USAID, $55 million with U.S. Department of State, INL, International Narcotics, and law enforcement. And again, Roots of Peace carries no flag. Mm-hmm. We serve the farmer, and there is certainly a new regime there, as we all know, after August 15th, 2021, when the Taliban took over. But the farmers still need our help. And again, I'm firmly committed to helping the farmers. The politics of any country is not my business, but the families and the mothers and the children who are at risk to these insidious landmines are due to be addressed. Again, I told you a little story about the Vietnam War and my generation at Berkeley. So then we went over to Vietnam, and I was horrified to learn that 80% of Vietnam was mined. So we trained the farmers and are growing black pepper on the former battlefields, which brings me here today. I am in Azerbaijan.
We want to know.
Exactly. So I've just shared with you the story exclusively, because I've never really told it from beginning to end, why I am born a peacemaker, and from my days of Berkeley to the Soviet Union, but here today, and with a wonderful president, your father, Ahmoud, had invited me here for International Women's Day a year ago, and I saw something I could never even believe, and that was Karabakh. You know, this beautiful vineyard area like my homeland was just desecrated, and it deeply touched me. I promised him that I would do my best, I would come back and do something, and when I put my word to doing something, I do it. And he invited me this month to be a speaker at his international landmine conference, but of course I had to decline. My daughter's having a baby girl on that day. So I came earlier for Mother's Day, and I wanted to make a statement on behalf of the mothers around the world who suffer. And 2 more days from now is Mother's Day, which I will be flying home to meet my family. But Ahmoud was so kind, and working with Nama, he had taken me to his village of Fuzili, and we were able to see the devastation. He had told me about the hurt, the landmines, the devastation, but to see it myself with my own eyes, it made me weep just in my heart for this proud man who works so hard for justice and peace and the eradication of landmines, and to go with him as my brother hand in hand and have him introduce me to his family, to his community, and these beautiful people that for him, for Ahmoud, came on that hilltop, mothers with you to sign a declaration on behalf of the mothers of Fuzili to the mothers of the world. We are committed to the eradication of landmines from the face of this earth. And what I saw in Karabakh was the courage of the people there, the vision, the hope. And when I saw the Karabakh International Airport built, as we're driving in with roads with no homes, landmines on each side, you know, that's your entryway to this international airport. And what I immediately learned is that these people have a vision for the future. They want to get past the war. They firmly want to plant peace. So this has been an extraordinary week to be here today. I celebrated your president's 100th birthday earlier this week with roses, and to have learned at the House of Alfred Nobel this week that in the home of Alfred Nobel, to know that I got the Nobel Peace Prize of Agriculture was really life going full circle. So my life has always been a coincidence, is a miracle in which God prefers to remain anonymous, and I look forward to carrying this journey with you wherever it takes us. May God protect our every footstep for peace, and may we join together with global citizens to turn minds to vines and plant the roots of peace on earth now. Together.
And lastly, I want to say that thank you very much for coming to Azerbaijan, accepting our interview request. And I do believe, and I'm sure IEPF, International Eurasia Press Fund's whole team, they believe, and also Anama, everyone who met you, they do believe that after winning World Food Prize, you will definitely change this, help us to change Karabakh, as we mentioned before, to a paradise.
To a beauty. And it'll be an example for the world to see, because, you know, beyond the borders that you have with Russia and Turkey and you know, Armenia, Georgia and Iran, this is the pearl. This is your pearl in the middle, at the edge of the Caspian Sea. And beyond the borders, I think it can be an example to the world of literally turning swords into plowshares, mines into vines, and war into peace. And we have to have dreams. I have to have dreams like the people of Karabakh. I have to dream big right now, because it's such an honor to have the World Food Prize, and with that comes tremendous great responsibility. So I made you a promise before that I would do my best.
And you will keep your promise.
And I will keep my promise step by step. So,
thank you so much.
Tashakura.
Thank you. Thank you so much.